A restaurant usually lasts somewhere from 2 to 5 years on average. And after they go through the 5 year mark, many restaurateurs have to ask themselves, is now the right time and should I turn my restaurant into a franchise? Now, you have five issues that every restaurant owner should look into in order to find out if a franchise is the right path for them. So you start with branding. Tell us a bit more about what a restaurant owner should look into regarding branding for the restaurant.
Every restaurant life cycle is between 2 to 5 years. Restaurant industry, it's a very complex and complicated business. Most restaurateurs start their business wishing that they become a franchise or that they open 20, 30, 50 units. Stop, don't do it. Open your restaurant focusing on just that restaurant for the time being, okay? Your business, it's going to tell you by itself whether it's franchisable or not. Branding, it's the image that you transmit to your customers about your restaurant. It has to be very consistent and corporate, okay? Let me give you an example. The Golden Arches. Everybody knows about the Golden Arches. They're consistent. Their packaging in the US, it's the same as it is in Russia, as it is in Mexico. Their image, when it comes to the Golden Arches, they're exactly the same. Branding must provide trust. If you're in Russia and you see Starbucks, you trust the brand. But it's a thought process when they created that brand. That brand is going to be recognized anywhere in the world. But they did not start that restaurant or that coffee shop with the intention of franchising it. Okay? But they start with a good foundation, good branding. Okay?
So you should keep your eye on the ball, but not lose track on your day-to-day operations.
Focus in the task that you have in front of you, which is your first unit.
Consistent branding is the first key. And speaking of consistency, you need to make sure that you can uphold the promises you make to your customers. So that takes us to procedures, standardized procedures
Right.
everywhere.
Right. Are my systems in place? Do I have a system for opening and closing the restaurant? And I don't mean closing it as going out of business. I mean at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day.
And everything in between.
Everything in between, as to how I greet the customer, how I take the order from the customer, how I prepare the order that I'm going to give the customer, how do I keep clean the outside of the restaurant, how often do I clean the outside of the restaurant, everything. Everything has to be a process and a system. Because what you're offering to the franchisee, it's that. It's a system, it's a recipe for a successful business.
Right.
That's exactly what you're doing when you're thinking of franchising. You're giving a recipe to whomever is going to buy your franchise as to how to be successful.
Right. Not just a recipe for
No.
food, but recipe
No.
for success.
Whenever we start a business, we start with limited capital, limited investment. That's the first thing that most business owners and a lot of restaurateurs face. Okay? So they want to do everything on their own. Don't do it. Don't try to do the systems on your own. Don't try to do the procedures on your own. Don't try to be front and back of the house. Don't. You need experts. Be willing to work with experts. Be willing to work with architects that are going to create a proper layout for your restaurant. Maybe you took over an existing restaurant that you're going to try to convert into franchise. Guess what? Maybe the layout of the kitchen, it's not the optimal layout for you to generate more business. Maybe the dining room, it's not properly laid out. So get an architect, get an engineer that is going to create the proper flow through your restaurant to maximize profits. Get an amazing engineer or developer that will create the right point of sale system that will interact between the other units and the headquarters. That's important. Not everybody thinks about that.
Right.
Make sure that you have integrated into that system a amazing inventory control. Inventory, it's money that it's on your pantry and your freezer and your refrigerators. That is going to convert into profit. So if you have a lot of inventory, beware. That's money that's sitting there, not generating you profits.
Right.
Okay? Have an amazing lawyer team. Not only to protect your units, but you protect yourself. Trademark your name, trademark your brand, trademark your logo, trademark your font, trademark everything. Okay? Have proper legal counsel. Have proper accountants, have proper tax advisors, have it all under a CFO. A CFO will give you an amazing value.
As an ex-restaurateur, you know how it is on both ends, and you can find hidden costs that may be bleeding out your business.
Or how much am I going to have to invest to convert my unit into a franchise? It's going to be expensive, okay? And it's a lengthy process, okay? Systems and procedures can and must be written as you go on your business, okay? Every day, start writing 1-2 systems procedures as to anything that you do. For instance, we already talked about when has the outside of the restaurant need to be cleaned. Well, create a procedure. Do you know what? The outside of the restaurant must be cleaned 3 times a day. Before I open to the customer, in the middle of the day, and as soon as I close the restaurant. And create a procedure as to detail, as much detail as you can. Go get the broom, go get the pan, and start brooming the outside. Pick with a hand, anything like this. Do this. Be very, very clear. Mind you, they don't need to be excellent.
Yeah, it's always evolving.
So it's going to be evolving. Okay, so that's an expensive and time-consuming process.
Right. And then you need to have a clear projection on how to expand.
Most of the things that we've talked so far, if you want to be really successful, implement them. Even though you don't want to franchise, or it's in the back of your mind that you want to franchise, implement all that, because not only it's going to position you for success, but it's going to make life so much easier if you have systems in place.
If you are thinking about turning your restaurant into a franchise, make sure you have a consistent branding, make sure you have standardized systems that you can replicate, get yourself surrounded by experts on each area, because you are not going to be a jack of all trades.
Don't be afraid to invest money on them. Don't be cheap.
Oh, the cases we've seen with people who tried to save some pennies and end up, wasting bucks.
If you're gonna go through Fiverr and hire somebody to do your taxes there, beware.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't be cheap in those items. They're so important. Your brand. Have somebody that is an expert in branding, because the color, the font, the image, the positioning of every single aspect of your brand, it's so crucial.
And then make sure you know the true cost of your restaurant operations and becoming a franchise, and make sure you have expansion projections.
Your expansion projections are so crucial, so important, because maybe franchise is not the right option for you. Maybe if you, after determining how much would opening a unit of yours cost, it's wiser to invest on yourself on opening other units. Maybe your business model, it's not replicable. Maybe the product or the secret sauce or recipe that you're trying to sell to the world might not be acceptable at other markets.
Right.
So it's not a franchisable product.
So not every expansion of a restaurant should involve becoming a franchise.
No.
Well, thank you very much, Vidal.